Hello, fellow Amiga users. I'm Bill.
I'm Anthony.
And we are the Guru Meditation.
So come along with us and check out DCTV.
The Guru Meditation.
All right, Anthony, I'm super excited for today's episode because I have here in my hands my actual DCTV that I used to use back when I was a kid. And man, this was like one of my all-time favorite pieces of gear. It allowed an OCS Amiga, in this case I had an Amiga 2000, to display images that looked like they were in 24-bit. It was like completely photorealistic. We all know OCS Amigas, ham mode, 4096 colors, it looked amazing, but still like it didn't look like a 24-bit image, and this allowed you to do it. It's kind of like a natural progression from the DigiView. If you haven't seen our DigiView episode, you gotta go check it out. We go in depth with DigiView, and today we're gonna get pretty deep with DCTV. But before we get into it, I gotta ask you, Anthony, what is going on with the hat?
Well, what happened was I knew I had to prepare for this episode, so I was reading up on how DCTV works. I went down in Das Bunker, I started looking around, and I found a side chamber. I felt like Howard Carter, I felt like Indiana Jones. Creeping into here, it was like a jungle of cables, dust everywhere, and as I parted it, as the light shone through, I found an Amiga 1000 that had not seen the light of day in so long. I didn't know what a person looked like, much less what a kickstart disc looked like, and I've resurrected that machine. I brought that up here, and we're running that with your DCTV today.
That's awesome. You never know what you're going to find in Das Bunker. An Amiga 1000 gets to live another day. That's amazing. Well, it might look like the 1000's broken, but it certainly isn't, because you might see the screen here, and it looks like a jumbled mess. Now, we'll just give you guys a brief overview on how the DCTV works. Basically, it connects to the Amiga RGB output, and it got a composite video output as well. What you're seeing here is the actual Amiga RGB image, right? And it doesn't look like much. It doesn't look like much to the human eye. As far as the Amiga is concerned, it's just like a regular image. It doesn't think anything of it. But there is a code in the upper left corner of this image that indicates to DCTV that it needs to decode this image. DCTV decodes the image, exports it over the composite video out, and voila, you have a gorgeous 24-bit looking image. Now, it's not true 24-bit. It doesn't have 16 million colors. It's actually an NTSC video signal. So it's got like 4 to 8 million colors, but those colors are like specifically tuned to trick your eye into making it look like it's 24-bit, man. And it really does. Like, I wouldn't know the difference.
Right. In essence, what the trick that they're doing is they're taking the resolution of the Amiga and putting out extra color information over that the DCTV then decodes when it's showing it here. So your trade-off is you have a slightly lower effective resolution, but you have more colors.
Another really incredible thing about DCTV is that it isn't just for still images. It can also decode animation files. Here's a beautiful animation of J minor that's playing in D-Paint. The Amiga thinks it's a regular 16-color anim, but as you can see, DCTV outputs an incredible 24-bit looking animation. This animation was made by our good friend Stephen Jones, creator of the Checkmate A1500 case and fellow YouTuber. Links to Stephen's work are in the description. Thank you, Stephen, for this beautiful animation. Anthony, much like you went splunkering in Das Bunker, I went splunkering in the barn, and I unearthed a rare VHS tape. It's called the Amiga Video Magazine, and it's a really great video. I actually posted it up on our YouTube channel. You can go check it out. It's up there on the Guru. But they went to AMI Expo 1990. They did like show reports. They did Amiga reviews. It was really top quality stuff. And so they were at AMI Expo 1990, and I was there too. It's where I met J Minor, father of the Amiga. It was definitely like one of the best show experiences of my life, obviously. And they did an interview with Digital Creations about DCTV before it came out. And I think they can do a much better job explaining how it works than we can. So let's roll the videotape.
Well, the first product we're going to show you is DCTV. It's a new product coming out this June or so. It's what it is it's a full bandwidth, full resolution NTSC frame buffer and digitizer option for the Amiga computer. The unique feature of it is that it doesn't have any of its own memory. It uses the Amiga for the display device. It attaches to the RGB port and the parallel port of any Amiga computer and allows you to do full bandwidth NTSC video digitizing and display. And right now this is a live image of a tiger, and we can digitize it. Okay, right now we're scanning the screen, scanning the image. Then we process the image, which gets rid of some of the color artifacts in the image, and produces essentially a full resolution NTSC video signal.
What is the difference, excuse me, what's the difference between NTSC and RGB?
Okay, NTSC unfortunately is a lower resolution system than RGB. However, it's been tuned to give you the most color for the least amount of bandwidth. It was designed originally for broadcast television to give you the best picture in a limited bandwidth. And because of all of these fancy features that are in NTSC for giving you that bandwidth, you get a much better picture for a lot lower cost in terms of memory and bandwidth.
How much color is in here?
Essentially as much color as is in television, effectively around 4 to 8 million colors. To the human eye, however, those colors are tuned to the right bandwidth to give you all the effects of a 24 million color picture, because the color bandwidth has been tuned to the way humans see television. NTSC has been tuned that way. So it gives you an image that's effectively, subjectively as good as a 24-bit image.
And what kind of people would be purchasing this?
Okay, anybody interested in doing video still store, doing desktop publishing, it can back create 24-bit plane RGB images. It's also capable of even animating in this resolution. We can run anim programs and create full resolution anims. You can use products such as Sculpt and Silver, the biggest 3D ray tracing programs on the Amiga, and create animations in RGB, convert them to DCTV, and have full RGB, effectively NTSC animations running on your Amiga with much higher bandwidth and much higher effective resolution than ham or high res or any of the other standard Amiga displays.
All right, Anthony, so first let's take a look at the actual DCTV itself. It's got a few inputs and outputs on it, so let's take a look at it and see how it connects to the Amiga and what these things do. First, over here on the left, we have video in. This is, like I said, DCTV is a video digitizer. So it's a composite video in that you can attach a video source to, whether it's a camera, Laserdisc player, VHS tape. That's your video input. Right next to that is a connection for the parallel port, because DCTV plugs into the parallel port, and the information is sent when it's digitizing to the Amiga through the parallel port.
Right, and this is where you have to be careful, because the Amiga 1000 of all the models has a very odd parallel port, where first of all, it's the wrong gender. It's the opposite gender of every other machine. But the biggest thing to be careful of, and I know in the DCTV manual you said it says all you need is a gender changer to plug in. From what I understand, you have to be really careful, because the 1000 outputs 5 volts over what most expect to be ground. And it's possible now that DCTV takes that into account, doesn't have that pin connected, but personally I would make sure that I had a specific gender changer made for the 1000.
That's really, that's really good advice, because 1000s are rare, DCTVs are rare, you don't want to blow any of them out. And there's lots of warnings in the DCTV manual about not unplugging it while the power is on, and so you have to be super, super careful. That's a great tip. Thank you. Speaking of being careful, right next to that is the RGB port connection that's built into this DCTV. And as you can see, it's got one end that plugs into the Amiga RGB port, and the other end is a pass-through. So you take your Amiga monitor, plug it into the pass-through, so you can still see what you're doing on your Amiga RGB monitor.
Right, and this cable gave you a bit of trouble with your 500.
Yeah, because if you look on one side of this connector, there's a thick cable that comes out the side. I tried to connect it to my Amiga 500, and lo and behold, like right next to the Amiga RGB port, on that side, on the 500, is the power cable to the 500. So you can't actually connect this cable to an Amiga 500 and have it on. So I was like, wait, this is a serious design flaw here. So I talked to my friend Thomas Cherryholmes, and he remembered that back in the day, he actually had a specific cable designed to deal with this issue. So it was like an extension cable for the DCTV. So yeah, if you have an Amiga 500, you're not going to be able to take the DCTV and just plug it in, and you're good to go right away. If anyone else out there has any solutions to this or ideas about this, feel free to post it in the comments, because I'd love to hear more. Next to the RGB port, we have a tint adjust. It's like an internal screw, and that's just simply adjust the tint, man. It adjusts the amount of green or magenta that's in your image. Your skin tones are a little bit off. You can adjust the tint with this knob. Next to that is the pixel adjust knob. Now this one is really, really important.
Right. I discovered this because when I first plugged it into this great old monitor, this JVC, the picture kept jumping on me.
And sometimes you won't get a picture at all. I know some of my friends have plugged in their DCTVs and they think they're broken because there's no composite image coming out of the DCTV. Trick is you just got to turn that pixel adjust knob until you see an image. Now, of course, you want to adjust it properly. They have a piece of calibration software that lets you get your pixel adjust like perfect. But the main thing is turn it until you see an image.
Right.
So your DCTV is probably not broken. Adjust the pixel adjust knob. And last and certainly not least, you have your video out. This connects to a composite video monitor. Like I said, back then most people used one monitor, like myself. Here we have a 1084S monitor, and we can switch between composite and Amiga RGB. But for your viewing pleasure here, we have an additional composite video monitor hooked up. This way we can see the difference between what the Amiga is displaying and what the DCTV is outputting to the composite signal.
And because we can.
As you're going to see today, you have to switch back and forth between Amiga RGB and composite when using the DCTV. And this was a little problematic and a bit of a pain back in the day.
Well, and it created another issue because you're coming out with a separate video output. You could not genlock the DCTV image.
Good point, good point. Yeah, there was no genlocking with DCTV. So Digital Creations came out with what is called an RGB converter. Now this sucker connects between the DCTV connector and your Amiga RGB monitor. And it allows you to have the DCTV image through the Amiga RGB output. We'll demo this for you guys a little bit later, but it's really cool. It also allows you to genlock the image, so the DCTV can work with the genlock, which is huge. And it's also better quality because you get Amiga RGB quality graphics versus composite video, which is not very good.
And of course, the great thing is you can then have, in essence, a 24-bit looking title over your video.
True, very true. It's a great device, and yeah, it's a pretty rare device too, so I'm really lucky to have this one. So Anthony, I think the best way to show everyone how DCTV works is just to take them through the workflow that I used to do back in the day. So I would start out by capturing an image. DCTV has three components, right? It's got digitize, it's got paint, and it's got convert. So digitizes an image from that composite video input. Paint allows you to paint on the image, and it's pretty unique. Because it is an NTSC video image, it's not actually an Amiga RGB image. So you're actually, like, every time you paint on it, it's actually like making NTSC waveforms, which is pretty cool, something a little bit under the hood and unique about DCTV. And then finally, there's a convert program, because if you don't have a DCTV and you want an Amiga, just a regular old OCS Amiga, to be able to display it, it's got a built-in convert program. Of course, you could always use something like AdPro if you had it, but if not, it's built right into DCTV. And we are going to be capturing today from my gorgeous Canon XL1 NTSC 4:3 standard def camcorder. I love this beauty, and it's the perfect tool for the job today.
Going completely old school.
What we're going to do now is fire up DCTV on my 1200. On the left here, we have the composite monitor, which is going to be the composite output of the DCTV. And on the right is the Commodore 1084S monitor, so you can see what's going on in RGB mode. And we have a couple of options here. We have an options button, a digitize button, a paint button, and the convert button. Options button is like your general preferences. So click on options. You can see that these are radio buttons. So if you click the radio button for Workbench, essentially, again, it's all about memory conservation.
Right, you turn off Workbench, and that will free up that display memory.
Exactly. And spare page, you can have a swap page with your DCTV. And the icons means when you save your DCTV image, it'll save an icon for it. And then quick load and save is just defining a directory where you can quick load and save to. And now we want to go into digitize. And now here's where things get really interesting, right?
Right, so now the DCTV is turned on, in essence, and it is now converting your whole screen over to the composite monitor.
Right, you can see over here on the Amiga RGB monitor, it's like this murky, greenish, grayish, very unpleasant to work in. But over there on the composite video out, the NTSC signal, it looks good. It looks like it's supposed to. First thing up is the source. Like I said before, it takes any NTSC standard definition video signal. So if you're digitizing from a camera, like we are today on my Canon XL1, which you can't see right now because it's right next to the Canon C300, you choose camera. And if you're trying to grab from like a VHS tape, which is always problematic because VHS decks don't necessarily have like the best pause, you would select tape, and it tries to correct for some of that. So under that, we have two more options. We have lace and filter. Lace has to do with interlacing. If lace is checked, then it's going to use 2 fields to do the digitizing, and it's going to take up more memory. And filter, like I said, a lot of VHS decks didn't have a stable pause, so they would get noisy, and the filter is basically a denoise filter. Then you also have quality, you have standard quality and high quality. Again, it's all about memory conservation.
Of course, we're in high quality.
We want high quality all the way. And then the speed of the scan is, again, it's all about the strength of the video signal. So if you have a really strong video signal, you want to go with a speed of 3. If you have a weaker video signal, you want to do a faster scan, which is like 1 and 2, to try and minimize the amount of jumpiness, which turns out to be like a blurry image.
Of course, keeping in mind, this is not like a frame grabber where you get like an instant capture. This is a slower capture, so you don't want to have any movement, you don't want to have any jitter. So the most you can minimize that, the better quality your picture will be.
That's a great point. It takes about 6 to 10 seconds to digitize an image, as you'll see. So moving right along, we have the scan button, the make button, and the commit button. The scan, we're going to do that in a second. That actually does the actual scan. The make button that basically goes along with what you see here on the right. You have all different controls, your color, tint, brightness, contrast, sharpness, and the amount of red, green, and blue in the image. You can modify these.
Right, so you can do minor adjustments right here in the program.
Right, you hit make, and it doesn't affect like your raw image. It's just showing you the change that happens when you adjust the color or the tint. Then once you get it looking exactly the way you want, you hit commit, and it saves the image. And you can't really change it after that.
And I noticed there's a swap button that looks grayed out, but of course that's because we didn't have that option checked.
Correct. Yeah, that would be the swap screen if we had checked it in the options. And then screen, that's basically like your screen resolution. We're in interlace mode and overscan, so we capture the full NTSC video signal. Depth is the bit depth. Of course, 3 is less quality, less memory. 4 is better, more bit depth, better quality. So we're going 4. All right, let's start the scan. Oh, who those guys?
Oh, look at those two.
So what we're seeing right now is the feed from the Canon XL1 camera over here on the JVC monitor.
And I noticed there's some instructions on the Amiga monitor.
Yeah, and over here in RGB mode, it says, it's asking, are you ready to digitize? Click left mouse button to digitize, click right mouse button to cancel. So of course we're ready. Now this is not standard practice here, Anthony. Like normally back then I would aim the camera image at still. But in this case, we just want to show you guys something that has some color in it, and that's us.
So we have to try not to.
So we have to try not to move. It's gonna be pretty hilarious. Don't try this at home, folks. So I'm gonna
or do try this.
Or do try it at home. I'm gonna look into the Canon XL1, which is right there next to the C300, and I'm gonna stay as still as possible as I press the left mouse button. This is kind of like an old like 1800s like photograph, right? All right, you ready? Let's see if we can stay
Pretty
still.
much, except we don't have the explosion of the flash.
Right. All right, let's see if I can stay still here. 3, 2, 1.
Now, although that's not instantaneous, that's still a whole lot faster than DigiView.
That was not bad. That was a whole lot faster. And look, the quality is awesome. Like this looks just like the video feed that we're seeing directly from the camera. So again, like I said, here we have different controls. If you want to brighten it up a little bit, we can slide our brightness to like a +7, and we would just want to hit make to see if that works. Well, yeah, it brightened us up a little bit. I like that. I'll take.
Now,
the
of course,
+7.
as you see, those are not instantaneous. So it's not as you slide the bright, you see that change. You don't see it until you hit make, and it commits that change to what you're viewing, although it hasn't yet committed that to the actual stored image itself.
Correct. Yeah, so it's really nice. It's a non-destructive way to work. I work in Adobe Lightroom these days, and I love it because all your changes are non-destructive. You can always go back without any damage done to the image. Because like if we were to crush the blacks here and make it like really contrasty, you would lose all that information, and you could never get it back. But by doing it this way, by having the make button and only changing what you see on screen, you still have all the information is there in case you ever want to get it back.
And of course, now you also have the commit button flashing at you right now.
The commit button's flashing and saying, do you want to commit? So let's commit. We click commit. Are we sure? Yes, we are absolutely 100%
Yeah,
sure.
because now you are going to change that base image and you cannot go back anymore.
Correct. You notice here there are different file types you can save it as. It's got RAW, display, and 24-bit. Now RAW is like the actual DCTV information. So it's going to be a huge, huge file, and only the DCTV software can read it and play it back. If you save it as a display, The Amiga actually thinks it's a 16-color high-res image, so you can bring it into DPaint, you can bring it into like any other program that allows you to manipulate 16-color Amiga image, and if the DCTV is connected, you can see it in DCTV format. 24-bit will actually save it as a 24-bit Amiga RGB image. But let's say you want to bring it into a desktop publishing program and you wanted a 24-bit Amiga RGB image, you can save it right there as 24-bit Amiga RGB.
24-bit would be your most widely usable as far as
24-bit.
bringing it into other software and doing what you want with that image once you're done.
Now let's just say you wanted to paint. You've got your fill tool, text tool, cut tool, all kinds. You have different brushes. You have like a line. I'm not much of an artist, unfortunately. I speak with the camera, not with the paintbrush.
Right, this is all pretty standard controls of any paint program, Deluxe Paint, Brilliance, all the paint programs of that time frame.
The only thing that's unique about it, again, is a technical thing that I'm not going to go too deep into, but like we're not actually painting on an Amiga RGB image. Like when you're in Deluxe Paint, right, each pixel is a color and it has a red value, a green value, and a blue value. When you're in DCTV Paint, you're actually like painting on video, which is pretty crazy. So like anything that you paint is actually an NTSC waveform. So it's pretty wild. It's under the hood, but it's just a cool concept. So I don't know, let's, for example, I'll just click on the paintbrush. I'll just pick some blue. It's got like a neat little palette down here that kind of shows you the brush before you use it. As you can see, if I move the brush fast, it makes more dots. If I just want to do a solid line brush tool, you click on that. And let's see, so then I worked it out there on the palette. Now I could draw a little mustache on you there. And a Workbench 1.3 blue mustache on you. that was about the extent.
Looks more like a big blue smile.
Yeah, there you go. Big blue smile. That's about the extent of my painting ability. So now let's say you want to give this to your friend who's got an Amiga and they don't have a DCTV. You can come over here to convert, and convert will convert it to standard Amiga modes, right? So then you could look at it on any Amiga. So let's just check out convert. The screen is blank. Reason for that is that we're over here in Amiga RGB, and there's right now it hasn't been converted to Amiga RGB. It's still an NTSC video image. So again, you have all controls here. You have your color, tint, brightness, contrast, sharpness, red, green, and blue controls. And then you have dithering options: no dithering, order dithering, diffuse dithering, or average dithering.
And this is going to be important because you're taking that image that has a lot of colors and you're reducing it, so you're going to want dithering to smooth out those transitions.
Now, next up, we have screen. Now this one is a really important option. You click on screen, and then here's the screen mode that you want to convert it to. You can see you have high-res mode, low-res mode, and interlace. Right now we're 320 by 200 standard NTSC low-res mode, and you can choose your colors. So we're in 4096 color ham mode. I feel like 320 by 200 ham mode is a pretty appropriate thing to convert it to. What do you think?
You can do that.
Let's click Make. It's analyzing the palette. And voila, there it is.
There it is, mustache and all.
Your blue mustache is retained. On the left, we have 4096 color ham 6 mode with no dithering. And on the right, we've got DCTV. What I would say, Anthony, is like, let's save this onto floppy disk. Then we can bring it over to the Amiga 1000, and this will allow us to see, a 24-bit looking image on an Amiga 1000, which is pretty awesome.
Let's go. It's funny, one thing I've noticed with most of my 1000s, the LED on the 1000 is either dim or dead, but the floppy drives are okay.
Interesting. They must use like different LEDs.
Oh, there's the mustache.
I see the stash.
I see the stash.
I see the blue stash.
Now I really feel like one of those intrepid explorers you see the old black and white photos of. And we don't know if their mustaches were blue or not.
True. All right, picture's loaded. Let's hide it. Boom, there you go.
The old girl still's got tricks.
Here we just digitize an image, capture it from the Canon XL1. But if you were into other programs like Vista or Turbo Silver, a lot of these programs actually had DCTV export options, right? So instead of exporting it as a standard 16-color Amiga image or a ham image, you could actually export to something that looked like it was in 24-bit.
Right, now I did something kind of like this. I had a Memetics frame buffer back in the day. I would render my images in Turbo Silver in 24-bit, and then I would display them on the frame buffer to see them in more colors than the Amiga could produce. But the advantage of DCTV, as you said, is you could even have animations, whereas the frame buffer, you could only show a still image.
There's an animation that came on the DCTV demo disc. Let's load it up. Looks like it's like a Vista animation. little Mount St. Helens, I believe. It's called
Yep,
St. Helens.
after the eruption.
Yep. The Amiga thinks this is just a standard 16-color animation. That looks awesome. I mean, whoever thought you could have this quality on an Amiga 1000 before?
Right. Yeah, the Amiga 1000 from, 1985, displaying full NTSC color images and animations.
All right, there you have it. There's DCTV. I had an absolute blast today. There's nothing I like more than pulling this old hardware out from storage and getting reacquainted with it and sharing it with an audience. And that's what this channel is all about. It's all about preserving the history of the Amiga, because this is really important, really fun stuff. We want to keep it alive. And I'll tell you what, I've got a barn full of stuff that I want to demo, and I know you've got a bunker full of stuff that you want to demo. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this.
Right, and if you want to be notified when we post a video, you want to click the little bell. We will see you on the next episode of the Groovy Meditation. Oh, the Amiga's so nice. Oh, yeah.
Got it, right.
Whoops. This should be a no alcohol set.
No way.
I got the perfect face for radio, the perfect voice for silent movie.
Nothing I like more than do you have tears in your eyes?
Son of a bitch.